All right, today we're going to take a journey through a truly magnificent piece of writing, N. Scott Momande's The Way to Rainy Mountain. This isn't just a book, it's this powerful lyrical look at Kiowa heritage, the incredible American landscape, and those delicate threads of memory that tie us to who we are.
Our journey starts right here, at Rainy Mountain itself. And as Momanday puts it, when you look out at this place, you just lose the sense of proportion. He's not just describing a hill, he's painting this picture of a landscape so huge, so primal, that your own imagination just sparks to life. You feel like you're standing at the very beginning of the world, a place where history and myth feel completely, tangibly alive.
And bam, right away, we get the reason for this whole journey. This isn't some vacation, it's a pilgrimage. The death of the narrator's grandmother is what sets everything in motion, grounding this huge, sweeping story in a moment of very real, very personal loss.
So this pilgrimage, it's a real quest. The narrator is deliberately setting out to follow the path his ancestors took, trying to connect with a history that, at this point, basically only exists in memory.
And this right here, this is the heart of it. His grandmother held their people's entire history in her head, in her mind's eye. So he's traveling all this way not just to see the land, but to try and see it the way she saw it, to try and bridge that gap between his own modern life and her deep, deep ancestral knowledge.
And what you start to realize is that his personal journey is actually running side by side with a much, much bigger one, the epic migration of the Kiowa people themselves, a story that his grandmother knew by heart.
And man, in just a few points, you get this huge sweep of Kiowa history. They start out in the mountains of Montana, journey out, and completely transform into these lords of the Southern Plains. This was their golden age. And then, finally, you see the end of that era, with their surrender at Fort Sill.
This breakdown here, it just perfectly shows you the sheer scale of that transformation. This wasn't just them moving to a new house. This was a complete reinvention of who they were. They went from a tribe just trying to survive in the mountains to this powerful, dominant culture that basically ruled the plains and worshiped the sun.
So how in the world did that happen? Well, they basically grabbed onto a whole new world. Horses gave them speed and freedom. The plains culture gave them new traditions. The sacred doll, Taime, gave them a whole new religion focused on the sun. And when you put all that together, it gave them this powerful new sense of themselves, of their destiny.
But you've got to wonder, right? How does the narrator know all this stuff in such intimate detail? Well, he knows it through one person, his grandmother, Aho. She is the living, breathing link to this entire history.
And Aho, her importance is just impossible to overstate. She wasn't just an old woman telling stories. She was a vessel of history, born at the exact moment the Kiowa's golden age was ending. She was like a living time capsule of that last great moment.
I mean, this is such a beautiful and powerful idea, right? Even though she spent her whole life in one place, her stories held the entire journey. The mountains, the plains, the migration, it was all inside her. Not just as stories she'd heard, but like it was written into her DNA, a memory in her blood. And look, this memory we're talking about, it wasn't some dry history lesson full of facts and dates. No, it was woven out of myth and legend. And one of the most important stories she told is about the Kiowa's connection to the sky itself.
So, picture this. You're standing at the base of Devil's Tower. It's this bizarre, massive thing that just shoots out of the ground. How do you even begin to explain that? Well, the Kiowa did what people have always done. They told a story to make sense of it, to find their own place in its shadow.
So the legend goes like this. A boy turns into a bear, chases his 7 sisters, and they escape by climbing onto a tree stump that magically rises into the sky, carrying them to safety. Those deep claw marks from the bear, that's what scored the sides of Devil's Tower. And the sisters, they became the stars of the Big Dipper. Now, the point here isn't just a cool story. The point is, this legend gave the Kiowa kinsmen in the night sky, a permanent celestial family that showed them their way.
But, even the most powerful myths can't hold back the tide of history. The story now takes a turn, shifting to the end of the Kiowa's golden age, a time of just profound, irreversible loss. You see, her personal faith, her deep respect for the sun, that was a mirror of her entire culture. The sun dance was the absolute center of Kiowa life. It was their most sacred ceremony, where they renewed their culture, their world, and their bond with their god.
And then came the knockout blow. 4 simple, devastating words. But the buffalo were gone. The buffalo were the heart and soul of Plains culture. Without them, largely due to mass slaughter by settlers, the entire Kiowa way of life just couldn't exist anymore.
And you can just feel the tragedy of that decline right here. What was once this vibrant, powerful ceremony centered on a sacred buffalo bull, it became this desperate, hollowed-out attempt. First having to beg for an animal, and finally just hanging an old, lifeless hide. The spirit was gone.
And just when you think it can't get any sadder, it does. The final attempt at a Sundance didn't just fail, it was forcibly stopped. U.S. soldiers literally rode in and broke up the gathering, ending the most central act of their religion by force.
And they give us the exact date, July 20th, 1890. That's the day it officially ended. The day the Kiowas, as Mamade says, backed away forever from the medicine tree. Pinpointing the exact moment a culture died, it's just chilling.
And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. The narrator, returning home, standing in the silence of his grandmother's death. A personal silence that echoes the much, much larger silence left by the death of her culture.
I mean, he remembers his grandmother's house as this place that was just buzzing with life, right? People coming and going, food, laughter, stories, just constant energy. But the house he comes back to, it's dead silent, empty. And he notices for the first time just how small it feels. Kind of like how that huge, vibrant world of the Kiowa had been shrunk down to a quiet memory.
And then, in this quiet moment of grief, he sees something amazing. He spots this tiny cricket on a handrail. And from his angle, it perfectly lines up with the full moon behind it. And for a second, that little creature's whole life, its entire existence, seems whole and perfect and eternal. It's this incredible moment of clarity, finding a sense of permanence in the middle of so much loss.
And so that's really the question we're all left with, isn't it? Mamade's pilgrimage is his story. It's the Kiowa story, of course. But at its heart, it's about something we all feel. That search for who we are, for where we belong, by trying to walk in the footsteps of those who came before us. And maybe, just maybe, seeing the world a little bit through their eyes.